Okay, now we're getting into the part where we're talking about this webinar that Paul Begley Prophecy.com did in early of 2025. This is another like a good halfway marker that they just came out with this webinar at this time, which I mean it was right after Stargate was announced, so of course. And I'm not going to cover like everything in the webinars. I never do, but just enough where the community at large needs to know. But if you guys want access on that webinar, I would say go to paulbegleyprophecy.com. And I suggest also watching Paul's channel on Thursday nights, his guests that he tries to have on every Thursday, Mike from around the world. You can also find him, I think, Council of Time and other Daily Excellence and other YouTube channels if you just search around. And he has had some pretty good information down through the years, and he's somebody I like to just try to listen to with my friends on Thursday, and we can just text each other of, girl, what he said this time, or like if we can hang out and compare notes. I think I'm just going to read some notes that I made on like my take on the whole deal first before I get into like what the speaker said. So several months ago, I wrote this early 2025. Mike from around the world announced on his Thursday night show with Paul that the government and other sources were purchasing lots of land to put the new AI tech on. And he said several things about these AI plants. So, but he did say this one: everything was about to change. The world's about to change. There would be factories, computers. It would all be nuclear powered. A few months after this, I was hearing a major plant being built near me that would change my area. And then after that, I heard they're going to put another one here, and then they're going to put another one. Um, in a state right next to me. So I'm hearing about the different places that they're putting these plants. I think they put the big ones like in the south where they had lower taxes and everything, where it's a lower cost to build it and everything. So, and they said that they needed it to be near water to cool down nuclear reactor if they use that for energy. And they're having some debates on, are they going to put a nuclear place like right next to us? Are they going to use natural gas, like what they're going to use? So I was hearing about the plant that's being built, and I also knew people that were now working there to build it. And so it is indeed here. And I was making the note then we're about halfway through the changes of this decade already. I suspect this is the big push toward cashless. So instead of using black horse or scales or wheat barley scales, I've been saying cashless for most people. The plan for this decade, because I think what it was too, y'all, is that the systems of the world had the plan desperately, because the theory is that the powers of heaven are shaking because of a binary solar system, a binary sun system, or these cycles that the earth gets on with the solar systems. They know it's got not climate change, but they've started talking about climate change scams to get everybody paying the taxes and getting controlled so that they won't tell everybody a cataclysm is coming. And then they can trick everybody into, when they do see changes in the world, people are always going to think the book of Revelation. Even people that aren't saved will think that. But they really don't want people thinking that. They want people on a scientific model. Since, like I said, 200 years ago, they want everybody scientifically thinking on a scientific model of everything. So they don't want you thinking the literal book of Revelation. They want you thinking science. So if you're going to be thinking science with everything, then they're franticking because they have to prepare the world for this collapse and what is coming. So that, from what I'm understanding, is the world was put on these cycles by the government systems. So the 9/11 cycle was to put the emergencies in, and then the Libya cycle was to start um, the geopolitical shifts and the wars. This cycle will be cashless and technology. And so that's kind of what this part of it is. Right at the halfway point, they roll out the tech. And that's what I'm calling the brains for the scales. When you see the rider, he's holding up these scales on the horse. This is going to be the brains behind the scales. It's a lot. There's another thing, guys. I used to study prophecy a little bit more passionately, like, wow, we can see it here and it's amazing. And the devil's tried to steal that from me, but I'm just letting you know, and you guys have probably experienced it too, that instead of like being amazed more like that it's actually happening, now it's like a deeper understanding that there's a lot of pain that comes with like I've said too, Front row tickets to the end times will cost you everything. A lot of pain. It's a lot of pain with this too. So, um, this is the big push toward the cashless, the global credit score, and the rationing system. And also, just be in prayer. If anything bothers you and you're fearful at all, that's the thing to be praying about. That's the thing to be regularly in prayer. Lord, how do I handle this when it comes? Or Lord, please take care of it when it comes. Please help it go this certain way when it comes. And you can ask your family and friends to pray with you too, because I've seen that honored a lot. That's a lot of good answered prayer. And these are the things that we need to be discussing, like people that don't even want to talk about we might be here for the tribulation. We need to be having these conversations. I'm so grateful that even some super secular people I heard y'all on a podcast the other day were saying that the aliens were demons. These are the conversations. 15 years ago, I prayed, God, I'm not going to ever be big enough to be able to say it. When I found L.A. Marzulli, I was so happy because I was not going to be big enough to say it. But I'm like, Lord, please let there be an understanding in the Christian community that these aliens are demons. And now everybody's saying it. And so I'm so happy. But one understandings and conversations that I wish people, like everyone, could be having too, is that we may be here for an Antichrist tribulation. We may see the Antichrist. We may see the temple. We may have to worry about the mark of the beast. So we need to be in some level of preparation. If nothing else, we need to be telling people to be praying about it, and also for an understanding that that's not the wrath of God. That may come later. That could easily come later. So there's reasons to be not just living in fear and making assumptions and not even praying. So the halfway point of the rationing system, something like what is described in the Revelation of chapter 6. And this is describing in Revelation 6, it's describing the black horse. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. And I still don't have a really good answer to tell y'all exactly what they probably mean by don't hurt the oil and wine, the differences between the wheats, the barleys. Other than I believe there's probably depths and depths that can be studied in that. But the biggest overall takeaway is somehow the food is going to be affected and there's going to be rationing. And so in 2019, I was telling everyone about the cycles I thought may be happening for 2 decades now. The first cycle beginning in 2000 decade, the first major push toward global takeover and unification of the world into the system seen in the book of Daniel and Revelation chapter 13. The beginning of this takeover started on 9/11 of 2001. By the way, once the events of the virus began in 2020, people kept saying how these global effect of the virus reminded them so much of the events that happened on 9/11. So, and then they didn't even know about me. People that was on the internet that kept saying, this is like 9/11. It's affecting the whole world like 9/11. They didn't know that I was being attacked by Satan on 9/11. So, the 2000s takeover event seemed to match the first white horse of conquering and to conquer, pushing the world from then on into loss of personal rights, privacy everywhere due to an emergency, and setting up the beginning of the global structures and the economy and the militaries. It's impressive when you really look at the details of this takeover. The way the Bible words it for the white horse is conquering and to conquer. And the word that I've seen and heard and used for my mind is take over and then to take over. Also, a lot of people, it's like they noticed the churches and like the spiritual songs were changing at that time. That's when you had something happened, and I've seen one other person comment on it specifically at this time frame. They were from a different denomination. Something happened in 2000 where there was this movement, and it wasn't just preachers trying to be popular. There was a plan that was put into the churches. I don't know what groups do this. I don't know at what level, who plans it, how it's funded, where the meetings are held. You never hear about this with Bilderbergs. But somebody decided to come in and change the church into seeker friendly and all this You know what I'm talking about. The smoke and the darkness and the pews have to leave and the soft things come in, and then you have the music is even singing about Antichrist sometimes. It's weird. So the churches change and it was obvious. And then 2010s may have matched Red Horse events beginning, peace taken, society collapse, borders open, homelessness, broken homes, racial fighting, and power grabs, and Arab Spring and Occupy movements, and Israel surrounded by the enemies, and then the future wars are planned and set up for. Another thing is I saw a lady being interviewed the other day. Catherine Fitz on Tucker Carlson was saying that she was working for the government. They told her to join Council on Foreign Relations or get fired, so she got fired. And she saw on that decade, that's the little rumor that's come out about the missing trillions. There's more to it than that, I'm sure. But she said she saw the underground. She thinks that funding went to energy sources that are not shared with the public. Underground, the underground structures, and also the satellite space and underground. She said that the infrastructure was put there. She said for the coming system that's going to be uh, like running the world and controlling everyone. I forget how she said it, but she witnessed that, and she wasn't even proclaiming a strong faith. But she said that she saw it happen on this decade also. This would have been the red horse. There's a lot that's happening with it that's not necessarily in the description of that horse, but man, during these time frames, there is movement like never before to establish the one world government. And I'll get into this a little bit later, like there's going to be 10 kings under the one world system. So Isis could have been the great sword mentioned at the red horse. There was given unto him a great sword, is I think the way it's worded. So a lot of things happened overseas for the Americans. A lot of things happened overseas that's not covered, that was not put on the news, or we would not have approved of our government at the time. Um, so we were also provoked to stop watching the news because all we saw was that everyone was a racist. And so we ignored a lot of the events that we might have missed the sign of what time it was because we weren't watching unless we were watching like InfoWars. So the events happened so long and so far apart as far as one seal and then the next. Maybe we didn't connect them and recognize them as easily. So military moves overseas were setting up for wars that we see today. The weather issues were escalating to the point that the UN and different people were saying that we're having a global starvation crisis very soon. And also, when the virus came, that might have been a bigger depopulation planned than they let us know because um, all the that's part of why you're having an immigration crisis is people are moving, and they said a lot of people passed, not just from the virus, but by lots of reasons. The whole world got so much harder. Like like life is delicate in some ways, and it's kind of like America really went to a second world country for a while there. Like we dropped, and then just from what I see, it's different. Like things are more difficult in tricky ways. Let's just put it like that. Things are difficult in tricky ways to where it's not sustaining to life quite like it was. So that if you're a weak and a vulnerable person, it's going to be harder for you to live. And there's a lot of different ways. That's why for a while there they were documenting the death, and then finally you didn't really hear about it, but you're hearing rumors that other country populations just dropped and birth rates dropped. And that's part of welcoming immigration is to keep your population looking right and kind of operating, even though there may be some danger with that. You're letting enemies, across the border and things. So one of the reasons, in other words, that the food crisis might not be so obvious yet is that the population has literally dropped that much, maybe. People have been speculating more on solar cycles and thousand-year historic cycles. Like used to, you would hear of like the 500-year flood. I heard somebody joking the other day. I follow Adapt 2030 somewhat, even though he's not Christian at all, and channels like that. The Ice Age Farmer, I miss him. He was a good one to follow. There used to be these hundreds year cycles in the weather that they just quit kind of talking about because now they're happening every week. Like that's how bad it is, and everybody knows. And then the rains are just destructive. It's randomly destructive. Like some areas are tropical and certain crops can thrive, and then some areas are just destroyed. So it's random. And they probably have been hiding the food crisis recently. And the only reason they won't hide the starvation crisis, I've noticed, is if they're trying to say that we need to do something about climate change. And then it's usually on the news about Africa. So by 2019, I was looking for the next stage that would be setting up the Black Horse events that would look like China's social credit system being implemented worldwide to control the populace into globalism and food rationing. They'll get us like through income and food, things like that. So I was thinking that 2020 to 2021 would be the major worldwide event because the other two cycles seem to begin around 2001 and 2011. By late 2019, I had written a book and I found it very helpful for myself and others. I had this small channel. That's when I get into talking about this minister that I've told you guys too much about, you know. We don't want to hear about that anymore, right? Okay, so I just went back through in my notes what I had written as a kind of like a precursor for this AI conference or webinar was how I got attacked on 9/11, which I just shared with y'all. So that part, there's so much in Revelation about these things, about the way we're being persecuted, and we will. Chapters 2 and 3 in Revelation talk about, you know, different times you will be put in prison for 10 days and don't fear. And those chapter 2 and 3 in Revelation talks about persevering, persecution, and hardship, and difficulty, and pain, and tribulations, and the verse about through much tribulation we will enter the kingdom of God. These were like the deep, even though we didn't have post trib rapture crammed down our throat as kids, we knew enough of the Bible. Like, I'm old enough to remember, we were taught enough to know that the selflessness of we will have hard times. We will see hard things. It won't be like that part in Revelation where it said, I sit a queen and I shall know no harm and I will never be a widow. And this is the people like the witch that attacked me. That's how he thinks. Like them kind of. So the humility of we're going to see difficult things and depending on the Lord to make us through and coming through the fire to be refined. Purchase of me the white raiments from the fire and the gold and the eye salve. But it's just a concept of how you see persecution and suffering, and either from a prideful perspective, and no one's going to be perfect, and people are going to not enjoy pain and not want pain, and that's healthy and good. You could protect people that way. But it's a difference between being humble enough to know that God is God, and part of the understanding is that on this side we will see some hardships and we'll have rewards, like what most of our rewards is on the other side. And this isn't just like to excuse evil, to never try for anything better, to never have good things, to give evil all of the good of the earth while we have nothing. That's not the point either. It's just in the end times we've been taught that if we want it, we will have. It's witchcraft is what we've been taught as church. If we want it, we snap our fingers and have faith, and we have it. We manifest it. We have a vision board. We manifest. We visualize. That's all witchcraft. And it's called prayer, and it's called faith, and it's witchcraft. And that's exactly what that evil man did that attacked me. And that's why his witchcraft wasn't working on me. He didn't understand. He hated me more and more. But the other thing, too, is, as a believer, is that it's not just that you decide. It's not just that you decide that I'm going to suffer as much as I can here to have more there. It's not like that either. It's more like when the evil comes that you didn't ask for, that was unfair again, you know there's the promise that blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the ones who weep, who are persecuted for the righteousness, for great is your reward in heaven. That, and the other thing too is it isn't just like, well, I'm just going to make an agreement. You know, that's fine to do, but you can feel. You're to where you can feel and see the eternal and the spiritual things in your spirit with God as you mature. You can feel it, you can see it. So it becomes this level of knowledge and understanding that I have more on the other side. I chose correct here and I have what I should have over there. More, you may not be perfect at it, but it's there. It's that level of, that's faith, by the way. That's the kind of faith you want. You don't want the kind of faith where I speak it and people worship me and they bow down when I pray in tongues. That's not faith. That's like what this evil man that attacked me thinks faith is. But the true faith is the knowledge between you and God, like he's not going to say, I never knew you. He's going to say, well done, to the ones who had the understanding and walked with the Lord enough that we knew, in other words, it isn't just like you're fantasizing and you're pretending and you're having delulu and you're just deciding. It ain't like that. It's like you experience, you walk with the Lord and you understand spiritual things enough that you just kind of have this understanding. Another thing that I was shown immediately at the worst of whenever I was first being attacked horribly, it was war. It was pure hell and war, and it was the seal opened, the seal broke, the pits of hell. Another thing I think that this symbolized on 9/11 is if you go to Revelation 9/11, it's Apollyon from the bottomless pit. And that's kind of like what kind of was attacking me too. It was like, and it's God's answer to CERN, because that's where it's sitting, is on the Apollyon and worshiping Apollyon. But it was so much pain that the Lord was just showing me the appreciation of what it means to sit on the white horses with white garments, and this is priceless. Like, you don't trade that for nothing. You do not trade your place on a white horse with some white garments for nothing. And that's where the Lord says we should meet more as the time approaches. These are the things we need to be discussing. This should be our focus, not I'm getting raptured into a candy cane land with roller coasters in the sky with Santa Claus. Just, I mean, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing what people have made the rapture to be. And it's like, I appreciate people saying, it's one thing to say the Lord escaped me out of a horrible tribulation, but if you do not have the sober mindedness to appreciate with the Lord Jesus, that as we see the time coming, if the Lord takes me suddenly home, that's the same as a rapture. If you don't have the sober mindedness of, the Lord took me suddenly home, and I escaped the tribulation, I'm grateful. Think of it like that. If you're not thinking of it like that, then you're not getting the sobriety of the fear of God and how serious things are. You're thinking of a roller coaster with Santa Claus, because that's probably how you were raised, and I can't blame people because I have my silly things too. But I'm just explaining how it seems, and I think it's not even the best witness of just having a fear instead of having a appreciation and a sobriety about things. It's really interesting, some of the lyrics of some of the more modern songs, though, are talking about sacrificing for the Lord and dying for the Lord, and heaven is your home if you die. So I'm like, the Lord's he's got his people that are more dedicated than I am and are more ready than I am, and I'm so grateful. So I was being shown, though, about the white horse and the white raiments on the white horse, and that needs to kind of be our focus. That's important. Being holy witnesses. I think a lot of people on those white horses were the ones that were saying, how long, O Lord, till you avenge our blood? We have been murdered, we have been violently harmed and lied against, and on and on. And they were given, in response to that, they were given answers that there's more martyrs. This is the process. And they were given the white clothes. And so that's your ticket. And I'm trying to coach myself this one. The injustice is the ticket. The injustice, the being lied against, that is the ticket to life, to the white raiments. So the ones that do it and never repent, and they're arrogant, and they're just evil, I mean, it's woe to them. They don't have no tickets to life. They don't have the ticket to the white raiments, to the white horse. They don't have the ticket. And the Bible says they will be outside of the city gates. That's not allowed into the city. That's why they will do the evil things they do to us that are unspeakable. These are things you can't really prepare people for, because, like, I've been through some war. You cannot prepare people for that level of absolutely just wicked and wrong beyond words. But it is helpful. The Lord was bringing all these understandings to my mind, a lot of deep things in the Bible about being a martyr, being faithful, and having white clothes when we sit on those white horses, because the ones coming behind Jesus are going to be witnesses. When he comes, and the brightness of his coming, and the sword comes out of his mouth and destroys this wickedness, we're witnessing. We're like holy witnesses saying this is righteous, because everybody behind the Lord is saying they did this to innocent people. Yep, part of your testimony is it truly cost you. It really cost you to truly follow the Lord. It's gonna cost, and there's going to be suffering, and there's going to be losses, and it's opposite of a modern doctrines of pampering the flesh and so-called speaking it, and it'll just happen whenever you say and you decide and you want, because you're God, not. Yeah, this past September was special. One of the things is I was in a church that was deep enough in with the Lord that when we were having our fellowship meetings together, just walking, I had some good experiences at a church. It was enough people that was walking with the Lord enough that I could feel things in the body there, and I could feel that there was a place for the martyrs and the bloodshed of the martyrs. And I'm not saying special as much as I'm saying, you thought you killed me. You thought you painted me out to be super ugly, but the Lord thought the opposite. Because now, and this is for lots of people that have been martyred in lots of ways, because I think the teacher gift in me and my family is we will voice the things that other people just experience and never talk about. But just walking it like in the fellowship hall when we're having meals together and I'm still halfway fasting, because I'm having to there's people that are just living wars all the way around us that, they're in a different understanding than the other ones. But I was having understandings that I was one of the martyrs, that I had suffered some of the foundational things for the church and things like that. And a lot of people have. It's not just me. A lot of people have. But that's what builds the church into the strength, into the real church. The church is not the church without the blood of the martyrs. And it's a lot of different ways, like the deep suffering and the sacrifices. And some people sacrifice more than me, but I'm having the understanding of this from having so much suffering for the Word of God. And I don't always remember these things perfectly, but I had some really cool experiences toward the end of last year. And I was in special prayer about it and wondering if anything would happen on 9/11. And that's one thing I would say. One of your main preparation things is it is time not only to meet with believers and pray together, even if it's on text messages, on emails, but be studying the Bible, even if you're just playing it while you're doing something. Be playing and studying the Bible, because you're gonna need that. You're gonna need way foundations in the Word, in every way, in the truth of when you go through the things that are coming. That's just one of the basics, I would say. That's the reason to be studying these things, is to know what we need to be doing now. One of the things I was shown toward the end of last year is that these past 4 years that a lot of us have been through, right? A lot of us have been through the crazy things these past 4 years. They were very special to God. I went through this time around the September, like I said, I was seeking God on September 11, like, will something happen now? Like, when will everything end? Stop attacking me. Many people suffered many things. The Lord showed me it was not overlooked. To the point, I was having this feeling, like, especially on the Lord's Day in September, that this was a special season that God memorialized. And I know that it coincided with the election cycle, but I just felt a weight to the season, the end of last year. It was a very special time. It gave God great glory. The end times events, they're not complete. End time events are not even what they should be, not what they were prophesied to be, without the experiences of the martyrs. I mean, that's what people are missing when I'm raptured out, I'm going up on the first load. They're missing that the end times is not complete without the martyrs, not of the people who were left behind, but of the martyrs of the saints. It's such a depth that's missing. I used to worry, man, people are not even saved if they can't understand this stuff, but I don't think that anymore. I think it's more like maybe they don't have a gift of understanding. People don't have a gift of understanding the spiritual things, because I mean, I feel like we're just all losing so much in these times. I'm not perfect either, but if you do not appreciate the depth and the heaviness and the gravity of the revelation, and no one's perfect at this, but prophecy is not prophecy, the church is not the church. These things are not the same without the saints are not the saints without the patience and the faith. and the suffering and entering the kingdom of heaven through much tribulation. So, one of the things I feel like the Lord was showing me about this past 4 years that we've all been through is what we went through marks what time it is. It was memorialized. These past 4 years were It's funny. It's funny that I received this understanding deep and it gave me peace before our halfway mark. I wasn't even thinking of it that way. But these past 4 years memorialized in heaven, somewhere in eternity, it was almost like God wanted me to know that I had not gone through every single bit of this. And then I don't even know about some kind of ceremony that's happening in heaven. It just felt like, you know how there's things in heaven that says there was silence in heaven for half an hour or something. I felt like the Lord was telling me, do not forget, this horrible season was memorialized, which lets me know God's going to take our suffering serious the whole time. It's not going to be overlooked. He's not going to forget us, and he's not going to take it lightly. He's not going to laugh while we're hurting, and he's not he's not letting the devil do it and saying we deserved it and all this. He's writing it down, and he's not happy. He's not happy with evil. He's angry with the wicked every day, but it was memorialized. He recognized our suffering almost to where I could, if I just knew what kind of honors were being given to us in heaven by angels and God. If I only knew. I do believe that 2020 started an important cycle. Most likely it was the third seal of Revelation opening. And it began with the virus being released, and we are witnessing the globalist plans and reactions to what is coming uncontrollably in the weather, and they have instructions to form the beast system. The reason the markets were shut down and unsettled globally is preparation for the coming shifts as the AI takes over. There is a goal to replace jobs and move everyone to the universal basic income. And who knows how far they'll get with that part. But that's going to make it easier to establish the rationing based on your social credit and to control everyone, because we won't have jobs because we have tech that can do all our jobs for us, right? So through this decade, there have been many pushes toward several goals. So there's one push directly after the other. We've had the virus, we've had shutdowns of various shutdowns of systems, layoffs, and then we've had the different wars that have started, hackings, UAP sightings, public disclosure, announcement of the North American Union now. That's what that was. As soon as he comes to office, he's talking about Greenland, Canada, and the Panama Canal. That's the NAU. The NAU people have died, y'all. People have died fighting the North American Union coming in through like the Texas Superhighway. Lost their properties, lost their careers for their properties, like the Common Sense Show guy, Dave Hodges. I think he lost his career and property, and his family did too. So now we have the rollout of the AI tech. At the very beginning of their shutdowns, we were hearing rumors of what was coming. So that's when you start hearing about the drones and the AI and the 5Gs and all of it. Invisible tech towers, superhighways, increasing release of the AI. And people were saying that it was majorly released in 2022. So we started hearing about it like during our shutdown times. Like, yeah, so here we have Gates with the 6 and the 6 and another 6 too, and all kind of weird symbols and signs. And I listened to enough InfoWars in the past that I didn't take any of the jabs. They're saying once the tech is really developed, there's no going back. But if you read Revelation, you see how it ends. So it's obvious the world is being deliberately changed by design, on a calendar, on a schedule, as planned. And we're being told there's a lot of climate change. Instead of the powers of heaven shall be shaken. A lot of these weather changes are also happening on all the planets and all the moons. And therefore it's not man-made. If it's happening on moons of Jupiter and Jupiter, it's not man-made. Another thing Mike keeps pointing out is that the same changes are happening with the sun and Jupiter at the same time, which means we probably have a binary system or something like it. It's coming from outside of our solar, and it's causing all the powers of heaven to be shaken. And then there are scalar and energy weapons being used to remove entire cities with the fires, and that's probably a plan to replace with our new AI cities. People are trying to sell the new tech. They're trying to tell you how wonderful it's going to be and all the diseases it will cure and end poverty and suffering. As usual, it's going to be the most poverty and suffering, and it's going to, somehow or other, the Christians are going to be the worst criminals in the system. That's how it always works. So Of course, it's going to be perfect if the archangel was running it, like Alex Jones says, but it's not the system and the errors of the system as much as it who's running the systems and what they trying to accomplish with it. So anyway, but I believe they're going to get so desperate because it's just going to fail, and people are not going to cooperate. That's how you're going to hear about. That's why Revelation talks about people that go through the beheadings, because it will be mass enforcement, is what it'll come to. In other words, it's a utopia. That's what you call a utopia. A utopia is mass beheadings. So our real hope in the world is now eternal. Always has been, but that's like, if you don't know how to grow in that faith, I would suggest Bible study and praying for miracles. Pray to God for miracles to grow your faith in the that's true faith. Is being able to put your hope into the eternal. That's faith, not speaking things with your mouth to get rich and have a car. Be humble, to be as humble as you can and obedient as you can, and ask God for help, basically, because that's what time we're in, and it's to know we're not the only ones in this boat. We're not alone. It will be too many to be counted and numbered with white robes in heaven, glorifying God. And it's like, how much time do we have left? Just with the weather changes and the wars, how much time is there for until the cataclysm, until the sixth seal? If we're at the third seal, especially, there was a webinar that's also on my YouTube, Planet X Effects, but they the people, the Christians that were studying the weather situation in the world and everything, said we're probably seals must already be opening. They were admitting that like 2 or 3 years ago. Seals must already be opening. So there's other people saying it. But the point being, even just with the weather, guys, like, do we have 20 years of this left? To escalate at this level, do we have 20 years of this left? You know? And that's why you see people very desperate with resources and different things on the earth right now with their plans. I keep thinking, because I follow, I think it's called El Shaddai Ministry, Mark Biltz, with the Shemitah cycles. He has me pretty convinced. One of the things he says is the tribulation might start in 2029. He don't say it directly, but that's another pattern thing I could get into later. But it's interesting that would coincide with the Apophis of 2029 and 2036. That's an interesting coincidence. But if that's true, that could tell you how close the pale horse was if the pale horse begins the tribulation. These things could be stretched out toward 20 years, or they could happen so fast. And I don't even try to know. I don't try to figure that one out. I just say that's how it could be. Kind of fast or kind of slow. And just don't be too surprised, or, try to be to where in your mind you're not going to take that mark. You would rather be lots and lots of things than taking any marks and numbers and names of beast systems. To be able to recognize a beast system and things like that. So, but I'm holding to 4.5 to 11.5 years as far as 7-year cycles. That's probably where we are from the tribulation, if I was to guess. Either 4.5 years away to that 7-year cycle, or 11.5 years away to that one. So feel free to put in the comment any ideas you have on that. Like, your idea, are we closer, or are we further away? Can we stand this kind of weather shifting for 50 more years? Is that a temporary sun cycle? Do we have a binary system? Are we in the seals? I think 4.5 to 11.5. There's a lot. Sometimes I just, like, if something horrible is just ridiculous in the world, I kind of use the silly phrase COVID, just like COVID. Ugh. Here, it's understandable since the virus. I mean, everything's crazy, right? Everything everywhere. But another thing I tell myself is 4.5 years. That's why it's like that. Is God's not giving this special grace that we've got to try to raise grandbabies up through 50, 80 more years. It's like God is kind of letting world systems collapse, because, he's letting populations decline. He's letting the currencies collapse, because the people of the truth and of the book need to be at peace. Just be like, that's because this is not our home. There's another place we're going soon. And to have that witness of, that the reason why the Father is saying goodbye, and that this is burning, and this is left behind, and this is in the dust, It's because we're going to the other place. There's another place. That kind of matches to me these Diddy trials of some real, how on earth did that ever, that's part of the revolution that's happened though politically recently. Because how on earth is those crimes ever supposed to be going to any court? But I just think the exposure timing is interesting. Recently, I heard a minister, he was reading through the scriptures. I think it was Paul Begley. It said, in Matthew, I think it said, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you. See, this is not deep enough in my heart. I'm still mad, you know. This is not deep enough in my heart where I kind of have this humble closeness to God. Like I need to even pray about this stuff. I'm just sharing because this is faith. This is real faith. Is we're fixing to go through this. We're about to go through this. And I just pray that we'll all have grace in that time. But it's talking about delivering you up, you will be afflicted, and they shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. So I used to think that would come from people that were doing some sellouts, and that's been the old-fashioned thing for perks and all, for promises. But it also seems like this new technology will be to blame for a lot of it. And I would say be careful what alignments you make at this time, especially for gain. Be careful of alignments for quick gain. And joining the system, working for the system, getting paid by the system for quick. I'm gonna make about a quarter meal in the next few years and get me some crypto. That is not the time. That is not the mind frame, I believe. When you're 4 years from the tribulation. That's what I don't believe in, like naming, like having a date in mind, a date setting, but I do believe in being aware enough that you can be making these kinds of decisions. I'm not panicking that I don't have a new mortgage. I'm not panicking that I'm not making my 401k bigger. It's not time to panic about that. That's not what time it is at all. It's very sobering. So with the new plants that are being built, you've probably heard of one being built near you, and they're being sold to us as we desperately need them, or China will be ruling over us very soon, and that's that's probably true, one way or the other. I was making so many jokes the other day at how much they own. Just ignore that. That's one of my daddy's old watches. He couldn't see, so his little watches would alarm to him and tell him what time it was. But anyway, that's how arms races have always been. Oh, this country is threatening, so we need to spend $400 billion on everything they tell us. You also keep hearing we can teach AI the Bible and we can all be healthy and rich. I just look out for these little schemes of how we're being sold, how wonderful the mark of the beast is, and how they're always trying to. So we're also being told that, oh, it's just this company or that alphabet agency or this or that or the other. And it's not coming from bigger funding projects. It's not all coming from the same project. It's just this one and just that one, and it's not all connected until the president made his recent announcement and just like this Stargate, y'all, we're doing all of it, and we're going to Mars. And then Mike said we already been to Mars. He said it in a roundabout way, but he confirmed it. Yeah, we've already been. So, and they're saying it will be run on clean and safe energy, and that may be mostly true. And having this many plants in the U.S. may make us more prone to attack by competitors, or it may make us indispensable to the bigger plans. As far as like what country would come down in the pale horse. My pale horse theory is that when it says over 1/4 of the earth, in the Bible, it describes the pale horse over 1/4. It's talking about over 1/4 only, and it's probably one region, and that could be from a solar flare issue, maybe, or a first strike issue, possibly, or AI wars, maybe. I believe that the overall plan for the technologies of the world, period. And I heard they were harvesting the antimatter at one of the poles. But I've been hearing that forever. They're harvesting antimatter, and they're trying to figure out how to make the wormholes and how to bend space and time. All of this, in my little opinion, has been, all this time, is to develop the ability to fight Jesus' literal return. Period. The number one goal for all the arms race and the space and all this it's all going to make it to where people are fighting, more people will die, more people will turn from God. It's a war of the souls. It's going to make it to where they can manipulate the countries how they want to the last second, and then they'll all worship the beast system. But like Russ Dizdar would say, the battle of Revelation 19:19 is what the aim is. Everyone in that, because they know, they've read, they will be destroyed by the brightness of his coming. So if they can play God and have CERN and manipulate space time enough with quantum computing and all this, they can throw Jesus off the white horse. That's what they're thinking, things like this. Okay, so in my analysis of the pale horse being 1/4 of the earth, I have been presuming for a while now that the pale horse, which is right ahead of us, probably 2029, something like that, is probably going to be either China or North America. Even if we're not consolidated as a country of North America, it would be over US, Canada, Greenland, even possibly Mexico for the population amount. And that doesn't mean everyone on that continent would die. It just means we would be under those four. And the reason why that it looks like it would be North America is that, man, this next system is coming so fast. The global system is coming very quickly, and there's certain things we still have that have to go. And that's another thing I'm looking at the end of 2027 is that could start that because of certain things that we could lose very quickly that they tried to do to Trump, even in Pennsylvania. It's very, I would say just get ready some very, very, very fast changes like that. And I'm not saying the pale horse would begin 2027. It would be more like 2029. But America has the certain things. We still have certain amendments that have to be disappeared. China does not. China is ready for the system. We are not. So that's why I would say we are under serious threat of either we're coming under the pale horse or something like that would happen to us anyway. And then they're announcing that it's the AI buildup is going to be slow and steady. It'll take another 6 years to build it up and set it up. But it's war, right, with China, and it does grow exponentially. So Mike says they're already operational in their technology everywhere worldwide as far as AI, with the recent plants being already at 75% ready. So everyone's saying the world is going to look super different by 2030 as planned, and some of the timing of the events makes me believe their plans keep shifting at the last minute. They've done this before a lot too. It seems like plans shift and they have several options and we don't know all of them. But it's still, what's really cool, one of the reasons why I'll map stuff and follow it to a degree is that it's a cool distraction that kind of keeps you on a healthy track of, going to work and being productive and not being super bored, but also curious of the things of the Bible and sharing with each other instead of being like in fantasy, watching movies, getting caught up in destructive kind of things. So, and why not? Because it's going to really affect a lot of people and the people we care about. Okay, so there are certain goals for this decade, 2020 decade, that will be accomplished through the health crisis, wars, monetary collapse, technology, mergers, alien disclosures, politics, and all the above, but in what order? So, why did they decide to release the virus now instead of giving us a grid down or a major hacking? So, I had been looking for a step 2 of the virus because that's what the World Economic Forum kept saying, and the virus only did so much toward accomplishing the Antichrist beast system, or the scales, the wheat, barley, and scales. So I'm realizing though that what happened there was I had been looking for possible either grid down, but most likely a hacking, a virus to our bodies and then a virus to the computer, and that may still be coming. And that may be when AI needs to miraculously be given all the control, is because there was just too much hacking. Everything got hacked, the power grids got shut down from hacking here and there, and then everybody lost their ID and their Social Security and half their savings. They could make it ugly, but so the hacking still may be coming, and that may be when they say, but with AI, thank God we had AI in time for all this hacking, or the computer viruses that came in on the back doors. Some AI has been released since 2020, but they've decided on the second half of the decade to do the major rollout. Like, why now? My question is, why now? That's interesting. not during the virus. And a lot of this has to do with, I think things are being done as quickly as possible, and they've just had to have certain things in place before they could do even the virus. That's one of the reasons why I think they went ahead and let Trump have it, is they know that Trump could go ahead and just push certain things through and nobody would say much, and they would trust him more. Kind of like with the warp speed on the jabs, because I think sometimes these leaders just can't say no to certain things, even if they care the best about us. And I think they don't plan things perfectly. They often fail, and their plans will change. And I think prayer changes things a lot too. So please and thank you for praying about everything on this. So the AI technology will be the brains and the power behind the balances of the black horse rider, behind the scales, and behind the beast system and the mark. And it will ultimately culminate into the image of the beast. I should just study the words where it says it's given life and realize somehow it is given life. So at the abomination of desolation, which will be halfway through a 7-year tribulation. So now into the AI webinar. I studied and shared about this webinar just before my dad passed, and